Hey, boys and girls, I miss you. Welcome back to another day of math. This is 11.2, but before we turn to pages 309, 310, let's do a little quick review on decimals. So we're doing decimals, but let's look back at them as a fraction. So we're doing tenths today, not tens, not 5, 10, 15, 20, but tenths. So 1/10 of a whole. So 1/10 we know of a whole. Let's say we have 3/10. 3/10. You know that you would write this like 3/10. 3 parts of 10 is 3/10. Well, what about that in terms of decimals? How could we make that a decimal? Well, do you remember our place value? We have, we'll drive it back here. We have tenths right here. Tenths, hundredths. And then going from there's our decimal. We have ones, tens. This is from the beginning of the year. Hundreds. Okay, so if we had 3/10, 1, 2, 3 out of 10. You see that? 3/10. What is the only number? What's the only place value that's going to get filled in this chart up here? Oops. It's going to be tenths. So the only thing we know from this fraction is our tenths, right? So tenths. How many tenths do we have? Well, we know it was 3. 1, 2, 3, 3/10. So as a decimal, it would look like here. Look like this right here. So 0.3, that's all we have. Now, when we do decimals, so we know that and we see that there's a decimal there, our rule is that we always put a 0 in the ones place. We don't have to put a 0 in the tens place. We don't have to put a 0 in the hundreds place, but we put a 0 in the ones place to show that there's no holes and it's just a fraction. So these, boys and girls, are exactly the same thing. 3/10 equals 0.3. 3 in the tens place. You see that right there? 3 in the tens place. And how do we read it? 3/10. Okay, a little bit more review. Remember how we could think of this in terms of money? Do you remember when I said, think of tenths and hundredths like pennies? It's like dimes and pennies. How many dimes can you take to make a dollar? A dime is worth 10, and 10 times 10 is 100. And there's 100 cents in $1. So 100 cents equals $1. And you guys write this like this naturally. $1 and 0 cents. So that would be 0/10. There's no tenths, there's no dimes, and there's no pennies. So how would I write 15 cents? Well, do I have any dollars? No. Okay, and for those of you who don't remember, cents, if you're writing this for money, cents comes after the number and dollars comes before. So there's $0. How many tenths do we have? How many dimes? We have 1 dime. And how many pennies? 1. So we have 1 in the tenths place, 1 in the hundredths place, and we know that that makes 15 cents. Okay, well, that's it for review. Let's move on to our page. So we are on the top of page 309. Make sure you're there following along. It says, a jackrabbit jumped 6 feet. It is able to leap 10 feet. The jackrabbit leaped 6/10 of its longest leap. So it's able, if it was jumping as far as it could jump 10/10. So it could jump full 10 feet. But how many feet did it jump this time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It jumped 6/10. Do you see that? Make sure I don't erase it. Do you see that? It jumped 6/10. So it could go 10, but it only jumped 6 out of the 10 it could normally jump. Now, here's where we're transferring this over. We already know about 6/10. Let's write 6/10 as a decimal. The decimal of 6/10 is 0.6. It reads 6/10. So you say it just like you would as a fraction, 6/10. And we know that because there's 6, and this is what place, boys and girls? This is the 10th place. 10th. Oh my goodness, why did I put a TH there? Silly me. 10th place. Okay? So let's convert these. And boys and girls, once you see this, you'll realize, just like adding fractions, it becomes super easy. How many numbers are in the tens place? It's like saying, how many dimes do you have? If I have 6 dimes out of 10 dimes to make $1, how many dimes do I have? I have 6. Where does it go? In the tens place. So let's look at this one. So a tenth is 1 part out of 10, right? We already knew that from our fractions. Now look at it in terms of decimals. We have 3 parts out of 10. 3 parts out of 1. Let's double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we know that there's 1, 2, 3 parts. 3 parts out of 10. What does that look like as a fraction, boys and girls? 3 parts out of 10. And as a decimal, we already have the 0 and the decimal point. It's 3 parts out of 10. So like 3 dimes. So 0.3. And we can write it in words as 3 tenths. Do you see that? Okay, so let's try the next one. We have 7 out of, well, let's look at it first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, there's 10. I'm going to write that in. But what would it look like if we colored this in? We need 7 colored in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, as a fraction, we have 7 parts out of 10. Do not write 10 on this line, boys and girls. No, no. What do we put on there? How many out of 10 do we have? 7. 7 parts out of 10, like 7 dimes out of 10 dimes that make $1. We have 7. So 7 parts out of 10. You write the 0 point, the 0 and the decimal are already there. So you write 7 right here. It's 7 parts out of 10. And we write 7, this is how we say it, 7 tenths. Okay, let's try another one. I'm going to switch this color. Okay, 9 out of, guess what? I bet you it'll be 10. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, they did it right. So we're going to color in 9 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do you see there's 9? Out of how many did we say? 9 out of 10. Okay, so as a fraction, how many is that? Well, we know the shaded in parts become the numerator. So there's 9 parts out of 10. And for our answer here, they already have the 0 and the decimal. So 9 tenths. Do you see a connection? What do you notice, boys and girls? What do you notice? 3 out of 10 becomes 3 in the tenths place. 7 out of 10 becomes 7 in the tenths place. 9 out of 10 becomes 9 in the tenths place. So what would we write here? 9 tenths. All right, let's move on. We are on page, oh, no, this is the same page. Just scooted down. Mine's just big. Okay, so write the fraction and the decimal for each picture. And I'm going to tell you they're all going to be tenths. But let's just count to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10. That's our denominator. And how many are shaded in? 1, 2. 2 tenths. Here we go. So how many in the tenths place? 2. But what comes before that? The decimal and 0 in the ones place. You're going to notice this pattern. It's going to come very clear soon. Let's see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That goes in our denominator. How many in the numerator? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 parts are shaded in, boys and girls. So we have 7 tenths. Well, I have no ones, but I do have 7 tenths. Do you see that? That's the tenths place. How many do we have in the tenths place? We have 7. Excellent. Okay, next one. Ooh, they made a cross out of this. Do you see it? It's kind of a hidden picture. I see a cross there. I'll get rid of it for you so I don't confuse you though. Here we go. Let's count. Let's double check to make sure they did it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10. That goes into our denominator. How many colored in ones do we have? Well, I could look at this if I didn't want to count, and I would do 10 minus 2, and I would get 8. But let's double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 parts out of 10. What does that look like as a decimal, boys and girls? Well, 0 point, how many goes in my tenths place? I have 8 in my tenths place. Do you see that? 8 tenths, 8 tenths. They're the same thing. Okay, here we go. Let's count again. I'm guessing there's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, we're right. 10 goes in the denominator. Let's see what goes in the numerator. That looks about half to me. I'm going to estimate it's 5, but let's double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 tenths. If I had 5 tenths out of $1, how much would I have? I would have 50 cents. That's correct. And I would have no dollars. And I would have 50 cents. I'd have 5 dimes. So there you go. And that reads 5 tenths. Do you see it? The 5 and 5 in the tenths place. Excellent. Now you get to turn the page. Here we go. Write the decimal number. So they just took out that other step, boys and girls. But if we know that these are out of 10, and I'm just going to tell you they're out of 10 right now. I'm going to put the I'm going to put the fraction on the side just because I know these are all out of tenths. I've already counted. Now let's double check to see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 tenths. What does that look like as a decimal? Guess what? $0 and 4 in the tenth spot. That's it. That's all you need to do. What about 1 tenth? I know this is 1 right here. What does that look like as a decimal? Well, there's no dollars. There's no wholes, numbers. There's no ones. And how many in the tenths place? There's 1 tenth. Do you see it? 1, 1, 4, 4. Okay, now this one. I don't even want to count these. If I know that 10 and there's 1 empty one, I know 10 minus 1, 10 minus 1 equals 9. But if I wanted to count it, I could. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I know this is 9 tenths. What do you think it will look like as a decimal? Well, I just need to put 9 in the tenths place. There's the tenths place. Do you see it? Tenths. Excellent. So write the decimal for each fraction. Boys and girls, all you have to do, I'm going to show you the trick right now. There's no whole numbers here. None. Go ahead and mark that first. What number goes here in the tenths place? 2. What number goes here in the tenths place? 8. What number goes here in the tenths place? 3. What number goes here in the tenths place? 6. Do you see the pattern, boys and girls? It's an easy peasy pattern when you're just doing tenths. All right, let's keep going. You should say, yay, I'm feeling confident, Mrs. Kornthal. All I need to do is put whatever number that is in the top of the fraction, when it's tenths, in the tenths place. Excellent. Okay, well, since you know that, let's see if we can work backwards. What if I know the decimal? What if I know I have 9 dimes? How much is that as a fraction, boys and girls? Well, the only place we're looking at here, this is all the tenths place. So what's my denominator going to be? Did you guess 10? Well, you're right. 10. This is all in the tenths place. Everything, all of these decimals are tenths. That's our only choice. They're tenths. And what number out of 10 is that? How many tenths are there? That's 9 tenths. So guess what? 9 tenths. 6 tenths. 1 tenth. 4 tenths. And last but not least, say it out loud. I want your mom or dad to hear you. 5 tenths. Do you see it? This should be feeling pretty good. Okay, so now we want to make sure you know the words. These are not tens, they're tenths. Do you see that? 5 tenths. 2 tenths. Now it says write as a decimal. That's the only thing that's going to trick you right here, because what if you wrote it as a fraction? What if I wrote like this, 5 tenths? Would I get it right or wrong? Well, that is 5 tenths. But did they want it as a fraction? No, they wanted it as a decimal. So it needs to look like a decimal. So the only thing I'm going to have is some number in the tenths place. What number do we have here? 5. 5 tenths. Okay, what's going to go in my tenths place? 8. 8 tenths. It's a wonky 8, but there it is. Do not forget, if you do not put your 0 and your decimal, it will be wrong. It's just the rule for writing tenths or writing decimals. Show me that there's no whole numbers. Okay, so here we go. Last but not least. So I'm going to put the 0 in the decimal because it's just 2 tenths. And there you go. Yay! We're almost done for the day. Okay, so now we get to use our, this is not review, we get to use our understanding of decimals and tenths to solve and write the answer in decimal form. So do not use a fraction there. This is, now that you know so many different ways to do things, boys and girls, they're going to remind you in the instructions. And you could be the smartest third grader ever, but a wise third grader always does what? Reads the instructions. Okay, so write the answer in decimal form after we solve it. A very large array radio telescope is located in the desert near Socorro, New Mexico. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but that's okay. Socorro, New Mexico in the United States. Visitors can take a 45-minute tour. That sounds important. 9 out of 10 visitors enjoy the tour. What part of the visitors enjoy the tour? And here we go, boys and girls. I actually underlined something I didn't need to underline, and here's why. What part of the visitors enjoyed the tour? Does it matter how long the tour is? Do I need to add 45 to anything? Let me think about that. What part of the visitors enjoyed the tour? It says 9 out of 10 visitors enjoyed the tour. Do I even need the 45 minutes? No. Sometimes, even though I thought it looked important, that's why reading the question is very helpful when you go back and solve, because does it matter? Does it say what part of the visitors enjoyed what fraction of the time of the tour? No, it doesn't talk about the time at all. What part of the visitors enjoyed the tour? Now answer that in decimal form. So we have 9 out of 10. If I was doing that as a fraction, it would be 9 out of 10. But 9 tenths, we know, as a decimal is 0.0, what number? How many out of 9? 9 out of 10. 9 tenths. This means 9 tenths. This is the same as this. They equal each other. But what answer do they want it in fraction form? No, decimal only. And I would 9 tenths of the visitors. Okay. 7 out of, let's look at 15. 7 out of 10 students who visit the very large array want to return the next year. What part of the students want to return? Now, they could have tricked you, boys and girls. They could have said, what part of the students didn't want to return? And you would have gotten it wrong if you didn't read it. But thankfully, it says, what part of the students want to return? And it said right here, 7 out of 10 want to return. So if it didn't want to return, we'd have to do some extra math. But thankfully, not today. 7 out of 10 want to return. So that's 7 tenths. We know we'd say 7. So if it was a fraction, we'd say 7 out of 10. But does it want a fraction? No, it wants decimal form. So 7 out of 10 people is 7 tenths. And the reason we say that, we know this, is because this is in the tenths place. Awesome. So 7 tenths of the students. Now you're saying, Mrs. Cornthal, how could there be a fraction of a student? How could there be a fraction of a visitor? You're not cutting the person in half. Remember, it's not 7 tenths of one student. It's 7 tenths of the group of 10 students. That's why it's 7 tenths. So don't get confused. Don't think we chopped up any kids or visitors. It's 7 tenths of the group of 10, which makes it 7 tenths. All right, boys and girls, great job today. Keep up the good work. And more than anything, love God and love your neighbor. How are you going to do that today? Pray about it and act on it. Love you. I'm here if you need me.